Joining us for a conversation is Shawn Khunkhun of Dolly Varden Silver. Mr. Khunkhun, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Maurice, thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show as Dolly Varden Silver has just confirmed an 81-meter step out on the Wolf Vein deposit, which is one of 7 high-grade deposits located on the prolific Kitsault Valley Project. Mr. Khunkhun, I have a map of the Wolf Vein deposit on the screen. Before we delve into today's drill hole 375, perhaps we should revisit drill hole 320 from last year, and let's connect some of the dots for our audience members.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Maurice. So, looking at hole 320, 321 grams of silver over 12 meters, which was a significant step out. And really, this is a deposit that started at surface. That is, we've now got it down about a kilometer, 950 meters to be exact. What we're seeing in this deposit, what was a vein at surface that was around 10 meters is now 30 meters at depth. So the vein is getting wider. We talk about it potentially being amenable to bulk mining, which is a low-cost mining method. One of the other characteristics here on today's press release, hole 375, is we are seeing that traditional high-grade 300-gram material that the deposit's averaging, but one of the highlights, one of the characteristics of today's news is the strong base metal content, which is taking the result from 300 grams of silver to 461 grams on a silver equivalent basis. So we're seeing a significant base metal hit, which is very, very exceptional.
And speaking of that, was that a surprise to your team, or were you expecting that?
What we saw with previous Wolf drilling, there was a hole that we had drilled last year. It was something in the neighborhood of 20 meters of about 500 grams of silver. And one of the characteristics there, I believe we put it out at Beaver Creek Precious Metals in 2022. We saw for the first time a gram of gold kick in addition to the silver. And why that was important is, we had never seen anything other than 99% pure high-grade silver in the southern part of the property before. And so last September, when we put out the big step-out hole at Wolf, again, around 20 meters of 500 grams of silver, to get that 1 gram of gold kick in that was pretty significant and is going to improve the economics. We were surprised that as we drilled deeper below that sedimentary cap, we've tagged into a very, very meaningful zinc and lead base metal zone. So it was a surprise, Maurice.
Well, it's encouraging news as always as the value proposition continues to increase here. And just let's revisit those numbers again for us one more time here on hole 375. Can you give those numbers one more time, sir?
Sure. So it's 461 grams of silver equivalent over 27 meters. That was the headline hole.
All right. Now, we also noticed that today that there was some, the first results, if I may correct myself there, on the Moose vein. What can you share with us there?
Moose is interesting. If you study the area and the history of the area, there was some work done on this Moose vein previously. But prior to the consolidation that the company has completed, the previous explorers only had the Moose claims. There's something known as the climax claims that are next to them. The Moose climax is how we now refer to it. But so Moose, there was never any follow-up done on Moose. So we've gone in and we've drilled over 7 meters of about 280 grams of silver. And why that's exciting is it reminds me of when we first got into Wolf at the end of 2021. As we start and as we look at these old areas on the property where there was a limited amount of exploration, a little amount of data, and there was follow-up needed, it takes some time to build up those targets. So what Moose represents is it's 1.5 kilometers north of Wolf, and it represents the next big opportunity on the property. And again, what Wolf has materialized into is potentially the next Torbrit mine. And Torbrit is the one mine on the property that had some really meaningful past production. Almost 20 million ounces of silver have been produced at Torbrit at roughly 500 grams per ton. And there's another 35 million ounces left intact that make up a 2019 resource estimate. And I was really on the search for the next 50 million ounce silver deposit, Torbrit being one of them. And it looks like Wolf has the potential to be the next. And then we're looking into the future at Moose and doing some more work up at Moose to build up that as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to those results. Now, before we leave the project site, Mr. Khunkhun, your team has been very proactive this year, completing over 50,000 meters of drilling in 115 drill holes with 70 holes pending assaying. When do you anticipate updating shareholders with more results?
As soon as they come in from the assay lab, Maurice. So as soon as we get those numbers, we'll turn around. And I've said from the start, even before we started drilling in May, what I envision is starting to report drill results in August and continuing to report probably all the way through to February.
Looking forward to it, sir. Now, today's press release was followed by last week's announcement that Hecla Mining has increased their strategic position in Dolly Varden Silver with a $10 million investment. Sir, please share the details of the transaction with us.
Sure. It's been a busy week at Dolly Varden, Maurice. We're very happy to welcome Hecla in an increased ownership stake. I believe they're a great shareholder. They've demonstrated that they're a sticky shareholder, and look, they're looking for the end product. So last week we announced and closed a $10 million strategic investment by Hecla at 65 cents Canadian. So that represents about 15 million shares. And it takes their 10% stake up to about 15%. So we're happy to leverage not only their financial contributions, but also their technical contributions. Their VPX, Kurt Allen, makes up a technical committee at Dolly Varden that Michael Hendrickson and Rob McLeod are a part of. And, they've been, like I said, they've been a great shareholder, and not just contributing financially, but also technically.
I couldn't help but notice. I looked at some of the bulletin boards out there, and they weren't too pleased with the transaction. And then a couple of days passed, and they noticed that the share price increased, and it got kind of quiet out there.
Well, a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks out there, and I could just say, if you think you can do it any better, there's you can be the 1,501 junior mining company. But I'm like Rick Rule. I think that there's 200 companies that have something that's really significant, and I put Dolly Varden in that list, and I put it close to the top of that list. So we like what we have. We're making some great decisions. Those decisions have increase the market cap, increase the share price. We've got great shareholders. We've got great people that are running the project, and we're going to keep going, Maurice.
Now, where did the additional 6% come from? If they had a position initially at 10%, who gave up some position?
So we issued that position out of Treasury.
Roger that. All right, sir. And I guess the question, I think that some of those that were those naysayers is, why this transaction? Why now?
Well, it's a catch-22 when you have a company that's not in production. You need capital to keep going. And so, my job as CEO is to try to find shareholders that are allowing us to build a business. And that's why I've gone out, and if you look outside of Hecla at 15%, Fury, through the divestment of Homestake, is a 22% shareholder. So 37% of the stock, over a third of the company is held by, two public companies. Outside of those two public companies, Eric Sprott is a 9% holder. And then outside of Eric, Fidelity owns about 7.5% of the company. So, and then we've got another institutions that represent about 40%. So we're really trying to look for shareholders that are bought into my vision for the company, which is to grow high grade silver inventory in a safe jurisdiction. I believe when I took over, the 37.5 cents per silver ounce in the ground that we were trading at was going to be revalued at a higher level in the future. And I've seen that materialize. In 3 years, we're now trading closer to $1 a silver ounce in the ground. And not only have we seen an appreciation in the in situ value of our ounces, we've also grown our ounces. And what I mean by that is through a compliant mineral resource estimate, through an acquisition, we've tripled the ounce count. So we've got triple the value for the ounces we have in the ground. We have tripled the ounces, and we've done 100,000 meters of drilling subsequent to that mineral resource estimate. So I think that's an understated estimate of what we really have. So I think, we're going to continue to advance the project the two ways we know how, which are through regional acquisitions and through continued exploration.
Last question on this transaction. It seems that Hecla was very keen on no further share dilution through the 1st of September through next year. Can you share why?
Listen, I think Hecla, as a producing company, they're very, very sensitive to dilution. And, they want to make sure that we are very thoughtful on how we advance this company. And I think, listen, I celebrate that. Any of the dilution that I have proceeded with, I think has been extremely accretive. It's one of the reasons that, our share price since I've taken over is up over 300%. So the market also thinks it's been accretive. And so I celebrate some of the terms and conditions that Hecla put on their $10 million investment.
And I second that. As you know, I am a monthly buyer of Dolly Varden Silver. You've covered the capital structure, so let's just get to the last question here, if I may, and that is, what did I forget to ask?
Maurice, you covered everything, my friend. Thank you so much. It was great seeing you at the New Orleans Investment Conference, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Oh, mutual, sir. So, Mr. Khunkhun, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Wishing you and Dolly Varden Silver the absolute best, sir.
Thank you.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.